Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Greater Georgia Life Forms and Admin Training webinar, sponsored by GMA. My name is Mike Falk. I'm the Director of the Life and Health Program. I'm also joined by Allison Earls with GMA, Natasha Akers with GMA, and Candace Varnado with Greater Georgia Life. We are glad that you were able to attend today, and we can jump right in and get started. And before we get started, I would like to ask you, or hopefully you have already received the Greater Georgia Life certificates and schedule of benefits from Candace Varnado. If you have not received those, that email from Candace, please let her know and she'll be glad to resend. Next thing I'd like to discuss with you is the agenda for today's webinar. First of all, we're going to talk about contributory and non-contributory coverage types. Then we're going to have a discussion about the EAPA certificate and schedule of benefits insert. Then we'll talk about the different forms. Both GGL and GMA maintain forms. We'll also discuss the responsibilities and the different roles going forward. We'll have a contact listing at the end. And last but not least, we'll have a question and answer session. If you will type in your questions as we go through the presentation, we'll try and be sure to get to those questions at the end. Contributory versus non-contributory. These coverage types are classified into those different types. The basic life is a non-contributory type. Employer must pay 100%. Also, 100% of the employees should be participating with that coverage type. The next type is dependent life. Dependent life is a contributory type. Employer may pay a portion or none, and then the employee would pay it. 100% of eligible dependents if employer pays for the benefit. If not, at least 50% participation is required. For the employee optional life and AD&D coverage, that is a contributory coverage type, and the employee must pay 100% of that type. At least 20% of all eligible employees must enroll. Short-term disability is considered to be a non-contributory type. Employer must pay 100%. And 100% of the eligible employees must enroll. Retiree life is a non-contributory coverage type. Employers must pay 100%, and 100% of eligible retirees must enroll. And that covers the contributory versus non-contributory types. We move on now. We'll move on to the EAPA, and Allison Earls will be happy to discuss the EAPA for us today.
That's right. Good afternoon, everybody. The EAPA is where everything starts. So, since you're all here, you already have an EAPA and you have one on file. And that's the Employer Application and Participation Agreement. And that's the document where your city said, this is the kind of life insurance we want to offer, and this is the amount. And it is an important document. So this is the full document of a sample city. And it says some things that the employer agrees to do. And so agrees that it's going to send in the premiums, things like that. And what it's doing, the employer is saying, hey, we promise we're going to do these things. GGL, would you please create a schedule of benefits insert for us? Which is an important document we'll discuss in a minute. And there are certain choices that the employer gets to make. So the first thing is the employer is going to make some of these choices. If you're going to offer anything at all, any GGL products at all, you have to offer the basic life. But then you can choose whether to offer dependent life, you can choose whether to offer optional life, and you can choose whether to offer short-term disability. So in this employer application and participation agreement, you're saying these are the things we want to offer. If you're a city, you can choose whether to offer coverage to elected officials. And this is where you make these choices. Are we having some technical difficulties? I see some, I want to make sure that everybody can hear us. We're okay? Okay. So I'll keep going. You also need to choose your eligibility waiting period. So when you have a new hire, the question is how long do they have to wait before they're eligible to start life insurance? This always has to be the same waiting period as the health plan waiting period. Then in section 3, you're going to choose the amount of coverage that you want to make available. So it may be that you've chosen that you want a certain amount to be available to regular employees, but a higher amount to be available to department heads. This is where you're going to make those requests. And then down here is where you're going to say how much you want to make available for dependent life coverage. And how much you want is the weekly benefit for short-term disability. So in this sample, the employer said, hey, we don't want to provide short-term disability, and that's why they have not applicable here. You also choose whether you want to offer retiree life coverage. This employer has says, no, we do not want to offer retiree life coverage. The EAPA identifies somebody who will serve as the contact, the position. That's really the starting contact. In the future, you can change that contact in writing by notifying GMA. And then this EAPA is approved by the mayor and council, and then that document goes to Greater Georgia Life, who will create the certificate schedule of benefits insert. And that's the next thing I'm going to talk about. One of these documents exists for everybody. So now we're going to talk about the certificates. There are 3 types of certificates: the basic life and optional life certificate, the retiree life certificate, and the short-term disability certificate. So these are 3 documents, but these documents contain information that is accurate for every employer that offers them. So this is the certificate for basic life and AD&D insurance. That's accidental death and dismemberment insurance. It goes along with basic life. And it has very important language in the certificate that you need to make sure that you're aware of. The table of contents is here, and it has important provisions. When does insurance begin? When does it end? It explains what happens if somebody becomes disabled while they're working. It has rules about what happens when somebody goes on a leave of absence. Because of course, in order to be eligible to be eligible for life coverage, you have to be actively at work, and you have to be working the number of hours in order to meet the eligibility requirements. So there have to be special rules when somebody becomes disabled or has a leave of absence to determine whether they need to have their coverage canceled or whether they can continue. There are important rules about what happens when the person leaves employment and their right to convert the life insurance. Important information about making claims under the policy. So that is an example. Oh, that is the basic life and AD&D insurance for active employees. And that's going to apply to absolutely everyone who has GGL coverage. Now we're going to look at the retiree certificate. You see down here it says eligible retirees, and it's just group term life insurance because there's no AD&D coverage in here. This has similar table of contents, but of course things like leave of absence doesn't apply. These folks aren't working. And it provides the information right here about what the eligibility is, when insurance begins and ends. And now we're going to look at the policy for short-term disability coverage. That's a different kind of coverage. The basic life and AD&D, of course, is payments when you have a claim due to death or accidental dismemberment, and short-term disability is a weekly amount that replacing some income. Same important information here in the table of contents. It will show you where to go. When does coverage begin and end? What is the coverage? There's some special rules about how the amounts are calculated. And so all the terms are in this certificate. Those documents apply to every employer that offers short-term disability coverage. So we know that each employer has requested through an EAPA that a special certificate schedule of benefits be inserted into their policies. And we're going to look at that next. This is the part of the policy that is just for you, that is tailored for your employers, your employees. So this is what Greater Georgia Life creates from the EAPA. And this becomes an insert to the correct certificate. It will be inserted into it should be handed out in addition to the basic life certificate or the retiree life certificate. It says what the life amount is, whether there's any optional available, what the retiree life is, and it includes important information about something happened there, about the spouse benefit, what the dependent coverage is, and then it just states here, this is part of the certificate that describes your benefits. And it says that if this certificate schedule of benefits says there is no dependent coverage because the employer decided not to offer it, then the descriptions of dependent coverage in the certificate don't apply. So this is the certificate schedule of benefits insert that would go into the basic and into the retiree. And there's a different insert that goes into the short-term disability.
Now we'd like to move to the GMA website, and we'd like to demo a few things on the website to show you where the forms are located. We can bring that screen up. And you want to go to under services there, go to go under services right here, and under insurance and life and health. And then you want to select forms, summaries, forms, and notices. Okay, and right here is where you would select, you go in the GMA life and health forms. Here you'll find the life benefit form, GGL life benefit application form, and change form, and instructions for filling out the form are listed right here in 4 different forms. You've got the GGL life benefit application for basic, and then also you have a retiree form. Also on here is the GGL salary change form listed right here. Okay. And this is if you have anyone with a salary benefit and they change their salary, you need to complete this form and send it to GMA so that we can increase the benefit. Now I'd like to show you where the certificates are located. You go back to go back all the way out to the next page, down and then back. Okay, should be back. Okay, and now go into the benefit booklets tab. You can select Abbeville, say continue. And for example, the Greater Georgia Life Basic Optional Life Certificate is located right here. Okay, and then let's go back. And then the retiree certificate is located here. Okay, and let's go back. And if they offered STD, the STD booklet would be found here also. And now let's go back. I want to show you where the GGL Life forms and documents are housed. Here are all the GGL forms that we will go through as we get through the webinar. Candace Varnado will go through those forms with you. And so now you have a good demo of the GMA website and should be able to find the important documents needed for the life coverages. Okay. And so next we'll go to the GGL application form. And Allison again will discuss the form in detail for us. And it's
Thank you, Mike. So the when Mike showed you on the website, there the application form, the forms where you're sending information to GMA are going to be under the GMA forms and notices. So even though the application is going to have to do with GGL, it will be in the portion that, along with other application forms, it's not separately in the GGL form. Okay, so in this application for or changes to GGL products, this is one form that can be used for lots of different purposes. And I'll note that you want to fax the form. You should not email the form because it contains sensitive information. And this form is not something you can just hand to your new employee. You have to fill out parts of it first. You have to fill out the employer name. They have a subgroup that they fill out. They fill out the subgroup, and you're going to fill out the requested effective date of the change or the new enrollment that you are letting GMA know about. So let's look at some of the different reasons you might use this form. What is the reason for your desired coverage action? Well, you might have just hired somebody into an eligible position. That could be a new hire, or it could be somebody who went from part-time, who is not eligible, into a full-time position and they are now eligible for life insurance. It could be a late enrollment for contributory coverage, that where somebody at first said, "Hey, I don't want to buy dependent coverage," and they later decide that they do. I can't see. Oh, what is this? A job class change. So it could be that somebody used to be categorized as a regular employee, and then they got promoted to department head, and that means that they get an extra $2,000 of life insurance, so that you would report. This is because of a job class change. We've got part-time to full-time. It could be that they have a new family member through marriage, birth, or adoption, and they want to add dependent life. It could be that they had a leave of absence and their life insurance coverage terminated because of that, and then they return to an eligible position. Or it could be as simple as an address or name change. It could be they just want to use this form to name a new beneficiary. Or there might be reporting that they don't want life insurance anymore for certain people because of divorce, death. The person used to be eligible, but now they're in the military service and they're no longer eligible. Or that they have lost employee eligibility, or they simply want to cancel optional or dependent coverage. So you check which of these things best explains the reason for this form. And then you enter the date of the event. What was the date they were hired into the eligible position? What is the date of eligibility or loss of eligibility? And then you also, if they you want to fill out their part-time employment date and full-time date of hire. This section right here is where the employer is going to affirm that the person, anybody who is going to be enrolled or have coverage increased, is actually eligible for it. So this is an affirmation. It says, "I affirm that the employee named below meets the following eligibility requirements. This person is age 17 and older and a U.S. citizen or legal resident, and income is reported on W-2, and is actively at work for pay 30 hours per week, or actively at work as an elected or appointed member of the governing authority if the employer offers that coverage." You're the only one who knows whether this person is actually eligible to be given life insurance. And so we need your affirmation that the person is eligible. If you have special amounts for people in certain job classes, then you would want to say, yes, this person is in the job class of department head, and therefore they get the department head amount. And if your coverage is based on a multiple of salary, you would have to put in the current annual salary here. Then you need to sign and date in this particular box. This date of the end of the waiting period should only be completed if the person is a new hire and the waiting period applies. Now, this form is to be used by everyone, so it's going to include stuff about dependent coverage. You need to tell the employee the cost of the dependent coverage. So they need to decide whether they want to purchase dependent coverage, and we don't know the cost that you charge, so you need to let them know that. And then they need to fill out the information about the dependents. And you always have to say what you're asking for, add or keep or waive or cancel. So down here, this is the part that you need to provide because this form is designed for everyone. So you need to be the one to say what coverage is available and say basic life, optional, STD. That's not something the employee gets to choose. Either the employer offers STD for everyone or they don't. So that's a part that you are filling out. If the benefit is a flat dollar, that would be entered over here. In the unusual situation that you've got a multiple of salary, the multiple of salary is entered over here. And this is the first time the beneficiaries are chosen. And so the employee will fill out who they want to be their primary beneficiary. As Candace will explain later, the responsibility for keeping beneficiary information on file is the employer's responsibility. Even though this is in the form, this information will not be entered into GMA's system. So you would want to keep a copy of this form so that you know who the beneficiaries are. So the primary beneficiary, they can enter one or two people. If two people are entered, it'll be divided up on the percentage, and then if they both die, you go to the contingent beneficiaries. And then this is important information that notifies the employee, hey, if you've chosen not to have dependent coverage or optional coverage and you want to get it later, you're going to need to do evidence of insurability before you'll be able to get that coverage. So they're saying basically, as soon as they're eligible, they need to go ahead and sign up for that within 30 days, or if they want it in the future, they'll have to go through evidence of insurability. And the employee must sign and date. Remember, if you have any questions about these forms, please go ahead and type them so we can make sure that we can answer them. Okay, so what we showed you before, there's a form that you can see that says the form with employer instructions, and this is just the same form without those red instructions on them. I can't see the question. So this is the form we just went through is for your active employees. For people who are who want to enroll in retiree life insurance or have changes when they're a retiree, they need to fill out a different form. And this should be familiar. This is where the employer is affirming that the person is eligible. And so this spells out the eligibility requirements for retiree coverage. So the employer is saying this person was actively at work and enrolled in our group life insurance on the day immediately before termination of employment. This person is in pay status under the GMEB's defined benefit retirement plan, and that means they're receiving or scheduled to receive monthly, early retirement, or normal retirement annuity benefits. and is a legal citizen or legal resident of the United States or Canada. And it just clarifies that terminated vested employees and employees on retirement due to disability are not eligible. So that would also, you need the employer signature and the date. Click the questions. I'm going to hear it like this. Okay. So I have one question. Does open enrollment apply to life, additional life, STD? That is a great question. Open enrollment, every year you have a chance to enroll in, make changes under the health plan. But that is not how life insurance works. When you become eligible for life insurance, you have 30 days after the date of eligibility to enroll in that coverage. And the only time you change that coverage is when you have a change in eligibility. So let's say you have a new child or somebody's new, you would change it as a result of those changes. But as you may recall, 100% of your regular employees need to be enrolled in basic life. And so this is not something where people are jumping in and out every year at open enrollment. Now you can at any time say, hey, I don't want my dependent to have life insurance anymore, and you can cancel it. You don't have to wait for any time to do that. But this rule about you've got 30 days to enroll in that contributory coverage, and you really need to go ahead and enroll new hires within 30 days, that's how it works. There is no open enrollment. Okay. Is STD available as a percentage of gross wages or only as a set amount? STD is available as a set amount. That is, it is just a weekly dollar amount. Now you can change that, and can you say different amounts for different employees?
It's the same amount for all of
them. Same amount for everybody. Okay, let's see. Are we required to submit new forms for currently enrolled employees? No, you are not. But you're not required to, but it might be a good idea if you don't have beneficiary forms on file to go ahead and have people do a beneficiary form. And it might be a good idea for you just to look at that form and say, I want to make sure that everybody who's enrolled really actually meets the requirements. So it might be a good idea to look through the form and do that. Okay, so we've talked about the application form. There are three types of forms that get sent to GMA. One is the application or change for actives. One is the application or change for retirees. And the third form is the salary change. If you've got benefits that are based on a multiple of salary, then you need to let GMA know, hey, this person's salary's gone up. And you need to do that promptly after the salary changes. I think 30 days after the salary changes, so that the amount of benefit can be increased. And I believe that is the last GMA.
Now we'll go to the, thank you, Allison. Now we'll go to the GGL forms, and Candace Varnado with Greater Georgia Life will speak about those forms.
Thanks, Mike. I'm Candace Varnado. I am your Greater Georgia Life account representative, and I'm going to go through the forms that are published by Greater Georgia Life. So the first form that you're looking at here is the beneficiary change form. Now I know that you've just viewed the application that is published and produced by GMA. That also has a beneficiary section on it. This is just a form that is an additional resource that's made available to you if you want to utilize this form. Like Allison mentioned before, you as the employer are responsible for maintaining the beneficiaries for your eligible employees. So please make sure, if you haven't done kind of a beneficiary refresh in the past, now might be a great time to do a campaign to refresh beneficiaries, make sure things like deceased family members and ex-spouses are removed, and that we have fresh new beneficiaries in the event of a death. When a beneficiary completes a claim form, we are going to come back to the employer and asking that they are the beneficiary that's on file. So we want to make sure that we have everything up to date. And the next form that we're going to talk through is the evidence of insurability form. This is going to apply in very rare situation. This is only going to apply on our optional life benefit if the employee does not elect the coverage within their initial eligibility period. So as Allison mentioned, when the employee is first eligible to elect this coverage, if they choose not to, they can come back and elect the coverage at a later date. However, they must answer this evidence of insurability questionnaire in order to be considered for that coverage. We ask that you distribute this form directly to your employee to turn into us in that situation. It contains very sensitive private health information, and we want that information coming directly to us and really not being seen by anybody that needs to see it. So if you look at the top of the form, the upper right hand side, the address is pre-checked on the form for where the employee can mail or fax the application. And then we'll move to the next form, which is our portability form. So portability is for optional life insurance, and what that is moving from your group plan into a pool of portable candidates. So they're maintaining term life coverage. It's typically after someone has terminated employment or after an employee's death. If they covered a spouse or dependent, that spouse and dependent is eligible to port the life insurance that the employee covered them on into our portability pool. So this would be the form that you would give to them. You want to make sure that you complete your employer section in section 1 and then give the form to the employee or the applicable beneficiary so that they can complete the rest. Make sure that this is something that is given to all eligible employees upon termination. It should be a standard form that's included in your termination packets. And they have 31 days from their date of termination to submit this form to us. And as you can see, the address to submit the form is at the top right-hand corner of the form. So the next form that we're going to go to is the conversion form, and this is going to be applicable to everyone for basic life. When someone terminates employment, they are eligible to convert their group term life policy into an individual whole life policy. So you would complete the section 1 with your employer information and give the form to the employee upon termination to complete. Again, they have 31 days, just like the portability form, to complete this and convert their coverage. I do recommend that on these forms you pre-populate maybe as much information as you can, and that way you would just fill in the employee-specific information at the time of termination. Again, the address is up on the upper right-hand section of the form. The next form that we're going to talk through is our life insurance claim form. And this is really a packet. The first page here really talks through instructions on what's needed to file a claim, and then we get into the actual claim form itself. I always want to make sure that you complete your section before you're handing it off to a beneficiary. Also, just kind of a coaching technique, if you're speaking with a beneficiary, I also ask that you request that they obtain a second copy of the original death certificate. It's often asked for and required when processing a life claim. And so it's something good to kind of let them know ahead of time. Again, we want this to come these claim forms to come directly to Greater Georgia Life. All of the information is contained within this packet on who should complete what section of the forms, what information that we need, and where to mail the forms. And so, again, if you make sure that you have everything that's outlined in the instructions appropriately, that's the fastest way to get a life insurance claim processed. And the next form we'll move to is the accidental death and dismemberment form. If there is any type of accidental death or dismemberment, this is the form that would be filled out and returned to Greater Georgia Life for a payment of that benefit. The top left-hand section of the form is where it will be mailed. And again, there is an employer portion of the form that needs to be completed prior to it being given to either a beneficiary or a dismembered employee. Okay, the next form that we're going to discuss is the accelerated death benefit claim form. The accelerated death benefit is an enhancement on GMA's policy, in your policy, for employees that have a terminal illness. If they are given less than 12 months to live, they can tap into up to 75% of their death benefit prior to their death to be used for things like expenses that they want to take care of prior to their death. They can use it to go on vacation if they want. A nice feature of this benefit is that if for some reason they do not decease within 12 months, they do not have to pay this benefit back. So if they have a miraculous recovery and they've tapped into this benefit, they do not have to pay it back. I do ask that when you're coaching employees through this benefit that you remind them that they're only eligible to obtain this benefit once. So make sure that they get the full amount that they want the first time. So if they get a couple of $1,000s the first time and they want to come back for more, that's not an option. So they want to make sure that they get all of their information in and submitted for the full amount the first time around. The next form we'll talk about is the waiver of premium form. So waiver of premium applies if someone has been disabled for at least 6 months. As part of the policy, we will pay the life premium on the employee's behalf if they've been disabled for that amount of time. Again, you would fill out your employer portion of the form, and then the employee would complete their data and submit the form. This would allow the employee that's disabled to continue their life insurance at no additional charge and premium. And then the last form here is our STD claim form. So if you have the STD benefit through GMA, this is the claim form that you will submit if there's a short-term disability claim. There is an a address at the top right hand of the form where they can fax or mail the claim form into. We will need things like attending physician statements and things like that to pay the benefit. So you just want to make sure that you read through the form and provide all the information upon submitting it. This is really, us telling you all this information is just so that you can go back and tell your employees and kind of coach them through the process. And at any given time, if you have questions in regards to these forms, later on in this presentation, we have contact information for you, so you'll know who to contact with your pertinent questions. Some of our last forms are what we call our special offers. These are our enhancements to our policy. So you have a travel assistance program that's made available to you in case the employee has a medical emergency while they're traveling or run into any type of situation where they need money or they need services while they're traveling outside of the country. This is a benefit to them that they can use free of charge. And if we scroll down on the form, there's also a little card that employees can keep in their wallets if they're traveling. That way they have the number handy that they can call. The next form that we're going to talk through is the Resource Advisor. Actually, we're going to talk through our discount program. And what this is just discounts that are available to members under the life insurance program. So they would just go to bcbsga.com/special offers, and all of the offers that we have available to them will be on the website. Things like vitamins, pet insurance, Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, gym memberships. There's a lot of special offers out there, a lot of discount programs out there. So this is something that's great for your employees to utilize as well. And now we'll move to the Resource Advisor slick here. And what the Resource Advisor program is kind of like a mini EAP program. So you have 3 face-to-face visits with a counselor for anything that may be ailing you in your life. I always make sure that I mention this, especially for employers that have health insurance. This is a great way to utilize your mental health benefit without tapping into your health insurance benefits. Since you get 3 face-to-face counseling visits at no charge, you can go ahead and utilize this benefit prior to using your medical benefits. You can get free time with an attorney for things like financial counseling, divorce, etc. So this is a great kind of employer assistance program that you have at your fingertips. Again, on this slick, there is also a card that employees can keep in their wallets so they know how to contact the Resource Advisor program.
Thank you, Candace. Now we'll move back to the PowerPoint, and the next slide we'll talk about are the employer responsibilities. These are responsibilities that we ask you, the employer, to follow through with. So here we go. So number 1, administrative changes and contact information updates. It's necessary for you to provide us with any contact updates so that we can update our systems appropriately and contact the appropriate people at the city. And the next item is, you're responsible for paying the applicable premiums to GMA, and also for collecting any applicable premiums from your employees for contributory coverage types. The next item, you're responsible for the enrollment, for completing the enrollment form and sending us the forms, and also any changes that occur, enrollment changes, we need to know about. Also, we would like for you to see the certificate for leave of absence information. Candace, would you like to speak just a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's just something that we wanted to highlight. There are things that need to be done that are outlined in the certificate if you have an employee that's on leave of absence. So we wanted to make sure that as we were talking through everything with you today, that we highlighted to just read through that section when you get an opportunity so that you know what your responsibilities are when an employee is on leave of absence.
Okay, thank you. And of course, you want to complete the enrollment and change form, and that must be sent to GMA within 30 days of the eligibility date. Also, we need you to report salary changes to GMA. If you offer a salary benefit, it's important that you complete that salary change form within 30 days and send it to GMA. And concerning EOI, evidence of insurability documents, you and the employee are responsible for completing that if it's a late entrant enrolling in a contributory coverage type. And you must send that, the employee must send that EOI directly to GGL and not GMA. And also, if another EOI requirement is if you offer a salary benefit and that salary benefit is over the guaranteed issue amount, GGL will have to approve that amount over the guaranteed issuance, and an EOI is required for that approval. The employer is also responsible for providing the portability, conversion, and waiver of premiums forms to the employee, just like Candace suggested earlier. And upon termination, it's like a termination packet, correct, Candace? Okay. And also the employer is responsible for communicating the special services and add-ons that Candace discussed earlier. And most important, or one of the most important items, is maintaining beneficiary information. The employer is responsible for maintaining that beneficiary information, and when a death claim is processed, GGL will, one of the things GGL will ask is who the beneficiaries are on that claim form. And last but not least, of course, is provide applicable claim forms and documents, and make sure you complete the employer portion on those claim forms and present them to GGL and the beneficiary to send completed form to Greater Georgia Life. Okay, and that winds up the employer responsibilities that we wanted to talk about. And do we have any questions at this time? Okay. The next slide is going to be GMA responsibility, and Latasha Akers with GMA is going to speak about those responsibilities. Thank you, Latasha.
Thank you, Mike. This is Latasha Akers. Once again, I'm the Senior Health Benefits Specialist, and I'm happy that you all are here. I'm just going to go over the GMA responsibility. I see that we have about 3 new life and health contacts on the line. So I want to thank you for being here, Brenda, Candy, and Sandy, and everyone else. First of all, the GMA responsibility is we are responsible for the enrollment form and the benefit change processing. We are responsible for the eligibility verification. We are also responsible for maintaining enrollment forms, posting certificates and GGL forms on the GMA website. And lastly, we are also responsible for billing employer groups for premium and remitting payment to Greater Georgia Life.
Eligibility verification. Sorry, this is Allison. When I was talking about the forms, I didn't mention at the bottom, but if you're enrolling somebody new, you need to submit verification, certain documents to verify eligibility, like birth certificates.
That is correct, Allison. So as you all know, at the bottom of your documentation, it'll tell you specifically that if you are enrolling a dependent, what documents that you will need, such as a marriage certificate for a spouse or a birth certificate for your dependent children. So let's be mindful. I think just about everybody online is aware that those documentations are required. But of course, like I stated before, we do have some new people that are contacts, and we just want you to know that we're here to support you.
Thank you, Latasha. Now we'll go to the Greater Georgia Life responsibility items, and Candace Varnado with Greater Georgia Life will speak to those.
Okay, so the GGL responsibilities. It's our responsibility for claims, administration, payment, and processing. Again, like I mentioned, you want to make sure that you're completing your portion of any of the claim forms, getting them to the applicable employee or beneficiary, and that they are submitting them along with the proper documentation directly to Greater Georgia Life to ensure that we can pay the claims as quickly as possible. If someone has experienced a death or a disability, likely those funds are very needed, and we want to get the payment turned around as quickly as possible. So we just ask that if you complete your process up front, timely and accurately, that we will do our part in paying the claims timely. Also, we're responsible for maintaining the Greater Georgia Life forms. Those forms are all of the forms that you've seen that have the Greater Georgia Life branding on them, and we are responsible for maintaining the information contained within those forms. Also, we are responsible for reviewing the EAPA and creating the schedule of benefits insert. So if you are adding or removing products with GMA, you're going to execute an EAPA, and that is going to be reviewed by Greater Georgia Life, which in turn will trigger us to create a schedule of benefits insert for your city. We are also responsible for distributing certificates and schedule of benefits inserts to the employers. As Mike mentioned at the beginning of our training, you should have received an email from me prior to today containing your certificates and applicable schedule of benefits inserts. My contact information will be posted again at the end of this training, so I ask that you email me if you did not receive it, because I've sent it out to all of the cities already, so I want to make sure I resend you your information if you did not receive it. Also, we are responsible for reviewing enrollment and eligibility exceptions. So if you have some kind of administrative error where an enrollment falls outside of the specified timeline of 30 days, then that would be reviewed by Greater Georgia Life for any type of exception. Also, we are responsible for reviewing all of the evidence of insurability forms, making an approval or a declination decision on them. There is the web address where they can also be, email address where they can be submitted as well. On the form, there's also a mailing address and a fax number where they can mail them or fax the forms. Again, we want those coming directly to us so that we minimize who is seeing the private health information contained on those forms. Also, we ask that you include a copy, or the employee includes a copy of their enrollment application when submitting the forms. And just something to note is that the height and weight question that is asked on the form, it actually is a requirement. So if it is not completed up front, the department is going to come back and ask the employee for that information. So just kind of a tidbit for you to highlight to the employees when you're giving them these forms. And then now we're going to go through some of the contacts. So our General Administration and Service Center is out of Ohio. You can contact them for general questions. Our Medical Underwriting Services Center is also in Ohio. This is for things like EOI form questions or EOI status questions. You can contact them directly for those questions. Also, our group conversion services, they are over our portability and conversion process, and you'll be able to contact them directly for any questions that you have on portability and conversion. Also, our Life Claims Service Center is based in Atlanta, Georgia. Any questions that you have in regards to a life claim, questions about documents that need to be submitted, questions about a payment, you can contact them directly. And our Disability Claims Service Center is based in Atlanta, Georgia as well. And you can contact them directly for questions on the short-term disability claim form or any questions that you have regarding status of a claim or payment on a claim. And then last but not least, your front-facing partners for your life and disability benefits, GMA program administrator, Latasha Akers, her contact information. She's your senior health benefits specialist. And then myself, Candace Varnado, I am your account manager at Greater Georgia Life.
Thank you, Candace, and that concludes our presentation. If you have questions, now would be the time to submit those questions, and we will do our best to answer them. So if anyone has a question about STD or about the basic life certificates or the forms, Feel free to type your questions in now, and we'll do our best to answer those. Do we have any questions yet?
Will a PDF of this presentation be emailed to participants? He said yes.
Yes, it will, and it will also be the webinar itself is recorded, and it will be placed on the GMA website.
And then another question, can we get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation? Same answer.
Yes. Do we have any other questions at this time? Okay, any other questions about the short-term disability or the non-contributory, contributory types coverage and those requirements, or the GMA enrollment forms, or the GGL forms? Any questions at all? Okay, Allison, do you have anything to add before we sign off? And Candace, do you have any closing comments at this time?
I do not.
Okay. Everyone, thank you for joining us for the Greater Georgia Life Forms and Admin Training webinar sponsored by GMA. And again, this webinar is recorded and it will be placed online for viewing at a later time. If you have any further questions, just feel free to send them to Latasha Akers here at GMA, and we will get the answers for you. Thank you for attending, and goodbye.